Welcome to Mojo Motivation and Mental Health. I'm Mike Orlowski. We're having conversations that change lives. Before we start, if you're struggling right now with anxiety, depression, trauma, thoughts of ending your life, please reach out, call or text 988. If it's emergency, call 911. You're not alone, and you do matter. If this show does help you out, or if you find these conversations maybe help someone else that you know, please share this with someone, hit subscribe, hit like, comment. We want to spread the word and help others. Today, we're talking about something that might surprise you, hypnosis. Not on the stage, stage kind of stuff that where someone makes you cluck like a chicken. Real clinical hypnosis that's helping people heal from trauma, break bad habits, and overcome fears. Faster than talk therapy, easier than willpower, and safer than medication. My guest is Gina Goodwin with Goodwin Hypnosis. She's a board certified hypnotist who's been doing this work since 2015. She helps people reprogram their subconscious programs that get them stuck. And here's what's interesting. Gina also specializes in working with other artists and performers and those who have had to rebuild their identity after being in a fame type of a situation. That is a challenge because people get defined by that. We're going to talk about how hypnosis actually works, why willpower isn't always enough, what those subconscious programs are, and how you can heal from trauma without having to relive it over and over again. Gina, thank you for being here. I'm really glad that you're here. Before we get started, tell us a little bit about yourself and how you ended up in hypnosis.
Well, to make a long story very short, I've wanted to help people pretty much since high school, college. I just wasn't sure how I was going to do it because, from my awareness, the only way to do that, the only way to do that was kind of like the psychotherapy route and prescribed medications, which have potentially severe negative side effects, including
Mm-hmm.
suicide.
Yes.
So I always knew I wanted to help people. I just wasn't sure how I was going to do it. And fast forward, I went through a very traumatizing experience. I watched over the course of 4 years, ups and downs. I watched my mom die of cancer, like kind of right in front of me, and I suffered for 2 years. I was only getting worse. And it reached a point where I knew I needed help. My physical symptoms and things that were going on in my life and my string of bad habits to help me cope wasn't really getting me anywhere. And my grief was only getting worse. I had flashbacks. I would have to pull over on highways whenever this would happen. I almost got fired from the job I was working at several times, and I was basically a mess. And then right around that time, I was thinking about a career shift because I was in hospitality for years and years. And I guess, I wanted to help people feel like home, like they're home, and whatever that means. And just welcome and comfortable and safe. So through that work, I saw a lot of things. I saw a lot of people with bad habits and dependencies. And so that just reinforced my wanting to help people.
Mm-hmm.
So around that time, I looked into helping people naturally, and I was doing some research, and hypnotherapy came up. And I wasn't even sure what that was. And then I looked into it, and I thought, wow, I can actually help people with the power of their own mind. Like that just almost sounds too good to be true, like magical. Like what is
Right.
this? And then around that time, I was introduced to my now husband, Todd Goodwin, who through a mutual friend that had his own practice in Miami. And he also was certified to certify people. So long story, I met him for career advice. I had no idea hypnosis could help with grief. I just thought it could help for fears, phobias, and addictions. I had no idea that it could work for practically anything. And so I asked him if it could help for grief because he kind of knew where I was coming from. I
Mm-hmm.
saw what traditional cancer treatments did to my mom: chemo, radiation, surgery, and everything in between. And I just thought there must be an easier way to help people, perhaps even prevent getting something like cancer the way she did, because stress lowers immune, unresolved trauma, which she had a whole host of, and a string of bad habits and a lifestyle she lived before she was a mom. And it was clear that there's like a mind body connection to me. And so I asked him if it could help with grief, and he said, absolutely. And I said, oh my gosh, because I told him how bad I was suffering. He didn't know that. He just
Hmm.
knew some of the angle why I wanted to help people. And he said, what would you say to me if I told you you could be grateful for your mom dying of cancer the way she did?
Wow.
And I said, I'd tell you that's impossible. And he
Hmm.
said, why? Of course, me thinking it's impossible is a belief. And he said, why? And I said, because it sounds too good to be true. There's no way. And so he just kind of rolled up his sleeves, and I scheduled a professional consult, like an official consult with him. At the end of it, I slammed down my credit card, and within weeks, I was fine. Like flashbacks were gone. Like I think the second week we worked on those, and they were gone within minutes and never came back.
Wow. Nice.
Um, I eliminated my bad habits. I wasn't crying anymore. I was so blown away by my results. And I was able to remember her as happy and healthy, not
Hmm.
sick and dying, wearing a wig and
Yeah.
things like that. And I got to a point of gratitude, because had it not happened the way it did, I would still be stuck at a dead end job in corporate where I didn't want to climb a corporate ladder, even though I had the opportunities. I
Yeah.
would turn them down because that's not what I wanted to do. So not only did it give me purpose, it also gave me a beautiful new relationship because I was also stuck in a dead end relationship. And so, in a way, it's like she had to die so I could live.
Mm.
If she were still alive, I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing today. I lost one, right? But now I can help hundreds, possibly thousands of people prevent getting an illness like cancer the way she did. And I
Hmm.
think that's something she'd be proud of. So,
Absolutely.
am I happy she died? No. Am I grateful? Yeah. And I would not trade it. Of course, I sometimes wish I had her for like another day or so she could see what I'm doing or
Right.
aspects of my life and how I've changed and what I'm working on. But, it was a trade off and the benefits continue to pile up. So, yes, absolutely. It's possible to become grateful for something that you deem as horrible or bad or terrible because there's always the other side. We're just not seeing it. And I was very inspired and motivated. And I was like, okay, this is really what I want to do. Quit corporate and began working full time, got board certified 2 years later. And I'm part of the 2% of hypnotists in the country that are board certified.
Yes, I remember from our meeting in the Outlier Project that it's pretty rare. There's not a whole lot that are board certified. Now, let's start by clearing up maybe what hypnosis actually is, because I think most people picture, at least I grew up in the cartoons and the watch swinging back and forth or a stage show,
We use an iPhone now.
right? I mean, what is clinical hypnosis? What's happening in your brain when you're hypnotized? Tell us a little bit about hypnosis itself.
Okay, so I'll start by saying what hypnosis is not.
Hmm.
It is not scary. It is not sleep. It's not mind control. You can't get stuck in hypnosis. And a hypnotist cannot make you say or do anything against your will. And you're not giving up control. You're actually more control of your mind in a state of hypnosis than you are right now because it's a very focused, relaxed state of mind.
Yeah,
So we naturally go in and out of the hypnotic state about a dozen times a day without even realizing it. So it's a naturally occurring state of mind where that actually facilitates new learning, right? So through relaxation, focus, we're able to get to that state of mind. It's a resourceful state of mind because in that state of mind is where, like I mentioned, you can learn things very quickly. It's like speed learning, like a state of speed learning. And you can also unlearn and relearn. So whatever you've learned, including limiting beliefs, bad habits, you can unlearn that
that's
just
helpful.
as the mind learned it. So yeah, just basically like upgrading software, reprogramming, rewiring, because sometimes wires get crossed.
Hmm.
So that's basically it. It can
I
be,
like that.
yeah, it's
I,
pretty
I updated my watch today. It makes that analogy works.
relaxed.
Now, one of the things I read, I think your site said, was faster than talk therapy, easier than willpower, and safer than medication. How is it align that way? How is it faster than talk therapy? What's the difference? Can you explain a little bit more?
Yes. So faster than talk therapy. Well, a lot of the things that hold us back, a lot of the things that cause suffering or emotional distress, leading to coping mechanisms, usually unhealthy, whether it's gambling, eating, drinking, smoking, drugs, whatever it is, are just coping mechanisms to help ourselves feel better based on what the mind has learned. If the mind learned that drinking helps me feel better, you're going to drink, even though
Yeah,
you know it's not good.
right.
So, our belief system, our memories, our habits, our imagination, and our emotions are all stored in the subconscious mind,
Hmm.
all of it.
Mm-hmm.
So, which is why traditional methods that we try to do to help ourselves, such as talk therapy, only goes so far because that operates on a conscious level. And that's not where the problem is. So it might be revealed to you why you feel the way you do and why you're suffering the way you're suffering. And it might be very informative, but revelation doesn't always equal resolution. You'll still have a
Mm-hmm.
problem. You still have those belief systems. You still have those habits. So the key is subconscious work. Going in there, working at the subconscious level to change those beliefs quickly, easily, rapidly, painless, and almost automatically without having to really try. The client doesn't have to try it, just the changes happen naturally because it's at a subconscious level.
Rapid and painless are two good things that everybody likes to hear. And one thing I know you had said on your site is you need to work with your mind, not against it. What does that mean? And how do most people work against their own minds?
Well, it's more like the minds seem to work against them,
Mm-hmm.
right? So, earlier when it's like easier than willpower, and of course the safer than medication part is pretty self-explanatory. Willpower operates at a conscious level. We have to consciously white knuckle it or hold back or force
Mm-hmm.
ourselves to avoid something or to go do something, right? The problem with willpower is that it runs out.
Yes,
We only have so much willpower.
right.
It's just a matter of time till we're going to go back to this or doing that we're trying to avoid. So, no willpower needed when the changes are made at a subconscious level. It's not necessary anymore. And people have a conscious mind and a subconscious mind. Everybody has this, right? The
Mm-hmm.
conscious mind is logical and rational and thinks long term, whereas a subconscious mind is illogical, irrational, and thinks in the short term. That's where our instant gratification is. And because that part is vastly more powerful than our conscious mind, that part usually wins. So
I
that's
get
where we
that.
feel
Yeah.
like we get in our own way. That's why we feel like I must hate myself. Why do I keep doing this when I know what I should be doing?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I want to do this, but I keep doing that, right? Like, literally, clients will tell me, well, a part of me knows that I just going to use a very basic example, not trauma related. I know I should feel safe while flying. It's the safest form of travel, everything. But I can't help being so scared I can't even go on a plane anymore. There it is, conscious, subconscious. Well, I know it's safe, but I can't get on a plane. The subconscious usually wins. So that's that internal debate that a lot of people experience. Everybody, to some degree, has internal
Mm-hmm.
debates about things.
Yeah. And what, willpower, I mean, I'm guilty. I mean, I grabbed a handful of jelly beans downstairs earlier, even though I know I'm not, I'm trying to lose weight. And at least I only grabbed a handful. It used to be I'd bring the whole dang bag up here. So it's an improvement. But so why doesn't willpower work for, like, tough ones like quitting smoking? I mean, that's a challenging one.
Well, some people might say they were successful using willpower, like cold turkey, right?
Yeah.
Just putting it down. But if you're not resolving the reason why you're smoking, because smoking isn't a problem, it's a symptom. It's a way to
Hmm.
help yourself feel better. It's to help you relax, maybe take a little break. There are benefits to it. Otherwise, the person wouldn't be doing it.
Right.
So they're getting benefits, even though in the long term it's unhealthy. But because, again, the emotional, irrational part of us only thinks of, I need to feel better right now, not in months or years or weeks, now. How do I do that? I smoke. Okay. So when people quit using willpower, they usually just put one thing down, but then pick up something else.
Mm-hmm.
Mostly it's habit substitution. That's why lots of people who quit smoking gain weight.
Yes. Yes. That
They're
was
really
my
not
mom's
stopping
biggest
the
fear.
problem.
Yeah.
They're just substituting one habit for another. So the key is to get down to, why are you smoking? What is it that's bothering you? What is it that is stressful? What is it that's unresolved? And once they feel better, at especially at the subconscious level, then there's no need for that crutch. And then quitting smoking can be easy. I've had clients who have left me 5-star reviews on Google that said they actually lost weight
Oh, nice. Yeah. That's
because
a
they,
good win.
and she was exercising more, and not so inflamed in her body, and she's like, I actually lost weight. I was afraid I'd gain weight. I actually lost weight.
Yeah, I mean, that's like a double win in that case. And, losing weight's not an easy thing. So it sounds like it changed her drive and motivation in the process.
The key also, I just wanted to add, is a lot of people who smoke identify with it. So
Yes.
they identify, a lot of people identify with their behavior.
Mm-hmm.
If you're looking at people who smoke in particular, they will say, I'm a smoker. I'm just a smoker. Like, oh, I smoke. I'm
Yeah.
a smoker. Well, you're not born knowing how to smoke. Like, you have to
No.
teach yourself how.
Right.
So a lot of people confuse identity with what they do. People are not what they do. You are not your behavior.
Right.
So
Yeah.
they're smokers. And I tell them, okay, how many packs do you smoke a day? Let's just say 2, right? Okay, so that's 40 cigarettes. How long does it take you to smoke each cigarette? I usually say 5 minutes, and I know it's less than that. They're like, oh no, much less. Like, can't get it down fast enough sometimes, especially if I have to go back to work or whatever. I said, okay, so let's just say 2 minutes. So you spend, what's the math on that? An hour and a half? If it's a pack a day? I'm not a mathematician, I'm
Almost.
a
Yeah.
hypnotist.
Yeah. What is it? 40 cigarettes, 2 minutes apiece, 80 minutes, almost an hour and a half.
Yeah. So an hour and a half. So I asked them, do you drive to work? Yes. Okay. How many hours a day do you feel you probably spend driving, especially if they have kids or anything they have to pick up from school? Easily 2 hours, sometimes 3. Okay. Would you call yourself a driver? Or are you someone who drives? There it is. They're not
Yeah.
identifying as being a driver, even though they drive, they spend more time driving than smoking.
Yeah.
So,
True.
do you cook? Yes, I cook maybe an hour a day, right? Food prep. Are you a
Yeah.
chef? You
Right.
someone who
No.
cooks.
Yeah. Yeah.
You might clean the house for 2 hours. Are you a maid? Are you,
Right.
or are you just someone who cleans? So
Yes.
they get their identity wrapped up with smoking. And if you identify with your behavior, and that's the belief that that's your identity, and if you believe that that's part of your identity, it's going to be extremely hard to quit because that's who you are and you believe that. And so that's something else I work with them on, is their identity.
Yeah, I was going to ask about that because I know you've worked with folks in the entertainment industry and it's a specific niche there, but there are common struggles that I think go hand in hand with everyday folks as well, especially with, say, folks that are defined by their work. For example, I was in logistics and I worked in an account management role in a global company, managing these accounts, and I was there for a number of years. And when I left, things were very difficult and I was in a bad place back then. I was defined by it because I was a workaholic. What are the common struggles you see with people who've been defined by their work? Maybe they've been laid off after being somewhere for 20 years. And maybe how do they get past that, and what steps can you take?
Hmm. I think the reason why it can be a problem for some people, whether they retire, once people retire, or people in the entertainment industry, especially, you see this a lot with former child stars that don't even know who they are. They're defined by a role they played, or I've heard stories from them that they're like, I didn't know who I was. I couldn't separate the character
Hmm.
from me, you know? And so not only do they have no sense of self, then all of a sudden, especially if they identified with the role, because they literally don't know who they are, and like those things become enmeshed and confused and overlap and wires get crossed, then when the role ends or the show gets canceled or whatever, and this is very similar with people who retire or get fired or laid off after a very long time, is like an identity crisis. So if you're not doing that anymore, then who are you? What's your purpose? And so people, I think the reason why they struggle so much across the board is lacking a sense of purpose. But again, you're not what you do. It's just
No.
something you do.
That took me 45 years to find my purpose, so I can identify with that. I get it. And, my purpose was working and the job, and when I finally realized that that wasn't what the purpose was, it was life changing. I think that's a lot of folks that are going through that right now. Is there's quite a few folks trying, struggling to find work or they've been laid off. So I think that was an important topic. Now, let's say you're dealing with trauma, and I know you mentioned that your methods let people heal from trauma without having to relive it over and over again, which is, of course, very important. How does that work?
That's the main core of what I do is trauma work. I love it. It is so gratifying, and the juicier the better.
Yeah.
But it's all great. And no need to relive it, no need to go into all the details because it's completely unnecessary. I've got a couple examples I'll tell you about, but the bottom line is I don't even really need to know necessarily what happened to help someone, which sounds
Yeah.
bizarre and crazy, but it's
Yeah.
true. It helps for me to know if there was any abuse of any kind, right?
Hmm.
Or betrayals or things like that, or what you're resentful about, or what you have trouble getting over, and when it happened, and how it affected you, and how does it make you feel when you think about it. That's
Hmm.
basically all I need to know. It only takes a few minutes for me to, it helps to know those things, but I don't need it. But
Wow.
it is
Yeah.
very helpful. But no need to get into the story because it's just a story. I just need to know what happened, more or less how old they were to know how impressionable it might have been, and or formative. But either way, it can even be someone who was raped as an adult and then got a fear of intimacy, fear of men, so it doesn't
Hmm.
have to happen necessarily when someone's young for it to really impact them, but it helps to know around what age the person was, what happened, how it made them feel, and how it continues to affect them. That's really it, because I'll know the beliefs that are formed as a result of all of that.
Hmm.
And it usually comes down to just a few things, just how they got there. Everyone's got a different story. But the root, like what it really comes down to, is pretty much the same across the board. It's like two, three things that, and they're all related, fear based or worthiness, and what their mind learned in those situations, like what association the mind made. I'm bad, or
Hmm.
I'm not worthy of real love because look what happened to me, or because so and so mom or dad left when I was little, that must mean they don't love me. So I'm not worthy of love. I'm not lovable. And then there's fear of rejection, and then that creates fears. Your mind creates fear. You're not born with fear.
Right.
Our fear is learned. And like I
It
said, whatever
is.
you learn, you can unlearn just as fast as you learned it and relearn more empowering beliefs. So when those beliefs are changed at a subconscious level, the emotions get better. And because every thought you have, there's a feeling attached to it. So thought provokes emotion. And based how we feel on that thought, we behave a certain way. Even avoiding something is doing something, right? So to change behavior, you have to go back and change how you feel based on the thought you're having. And the thought comes from a belief system. So if you have a belief that you're not worthy, and then you're going to go into a job interview, you're going to feel like you don't deserve it.
Yes.
And that
Been
thought
there.
will get you to feel kind of crappy. And it leads to behavior, right? So we have to go back and change the worthiness belief. And how to do that is it. And I had a client once who I'm pretty sure he worked for the CIA. He came to me specifically because he wasn't allowed to talk about things. Everything was very
Yeah.
confidential. I just know he worked for like a three-letter branch in the government. And this was back in Miami when I saw people in person in my office. And I know he traveled a lot to Southern California and Mexico, and he had a lot of trauma. And his problem was insomnia, which is really a symptom. Who knows what he was getting into? My guess is like drug busts. And I'm sure, I don't know, he's probably seen some stuff. And he would come to my office with a gun strapped to his ankle because at any moment someone could come and shoot him. And I was like, oh, God.
Yeah.
Oh, a guy like that. And,
Yeah.
we were doing memory clearing and neutralizing emotions and some memory reconsolidation. And I have no idea what the memories were. He wasn't allowed to talk about it.
Yeah.
I have no idea what the memories were. I was just asking him, do you have it in your mind? Yes. The feeling? Yes. We work with the feeling, right?
Mm,
Because emotions are in the subconscious mind, the memories are in the subconscious mind. So once I helped neutralize those memories for him and it didn't bother him anymore, he could sleep better. And quite frankly, I don't want to know what those memories were.
right. Going one thing back to the smoking conversation, you mentioned quitting smoking because people, and obviously people identify as smokers, but how does it work from a withdrawal standpoint, right? I mean, people quit smoking all the time, and then of course they go through withdrawal and they go back to it. How does hypnosis help someone in that area?
Not only is it hypnosis, it's also some nutritional things going on.
Mm,
And a lot of people who smoke don't realize this, and you're not taught this, right? So nicotine, when people smoke, it spikes their sugar, right? So when they're not smoking anymore, I tell them, lower your caffeine intake by like half and eat something in the morning. So that way your blood sugar is stabilized. Because if they're not smoking anymore, but then they're just having all this caffeine, they get like the jitters and they get these feelings and they think it's because they need to smoke. It's like,
yeah.
no, you just have a sugar issue right now. Eat something.
Hmm.
And if it's
Yeah.
a bagel or a couple eggs or something, so a lot of it is actually nutritional as well. And that helps with withdrawal. My clients I help quit smoking don't go through that. There might be some discomfort for 2, 3 days as it's leaving your body, but I teach them things to help them go through it. And usually after that, it's extremely simple. Some people don't even experience that because
Nice.
again, they're not using willpower. They know the nutrition part behind it that I inform them of, and they usually don't struggle. And if they do, it's manageable. And it's only just for like a couple days.
Wow. Yeah. That's helpful and that's powerful for people. Now you work with stress, anxiety, fears, low self-worth, bad habits, grief, trauma. Is trauma the most common issue people come to you for or something else? And how long does it usually take for you to start seeing results?
The vast majority of my clients, probably 90 some percent, have unresolved trauma, whether it's big T or little t. We're all sensitive to different things. They don't, might not realize it. They might be the biggest problem that people come with is anxiety. And I put it in quotes because it's not their problem, it's a symptom. So anxiety is usually based on remembering a past pain, and then your mind creates a future fear. So you're never really
Yes.
living in the present.
Yes. Very
And
common. I had a lot of problems with anxiety growing up.
so once all those past pains are resolved, then the future fears go away and the symptom of anxiety goes away and coping mechanisms to help the anxiety. Even if they're healthy, like being a gym rat, they'll still enjoy going to the gym, but the drive behind it is different. It's healthier, instead of like a place to escape, it's which has healthy benefits. But of course, if you overdo it, you can hurt yourself. And if you're
Sure.
constantly stressing your body like that, it's just producing more cortisol and that can just, affect stress. The vast majority, really, it's trauma, but people don't realize it. They might
Hmm.
not understand why they're a workaholic and they just can't stop. And then they're having breakdowns where they can't even go to the grocery store anymore,
Oh,
you know,
wow.
and
Yeah.
they don't know why and they have no idea. And it only takes sometimes a matter of seconds or just a few minutes to not understand why, but see why. And a memory may come up that they haven't thought about in years. And that was the very thing that caused all of this.
Hmm.
So neutralizing it, remembering it differently, even though you still remember what happened, it just doesn't affect you anymore. So the key isn't like forgetting or can you erase my memory about this or help me forget about this person? And I was like, well, I think you want to forget about them so you don't feel bad anymore. What if you could
Yeah.
still remember them and maybe even honor what happened and not feel burdened by it anymore? And I work, I build each week, I build on what we've done before. And usually after 1, 2, definitely 3 weeks, people are starting to feel much better. And
Nice.
usually within the course of less than 2 months, people are fine. They're totally fine.
Yeah. So it doesn't take that long. And now you offer sessions live and in person. I know you're in the Raleigh Durham area. Do you do both Zoom and in person?
No, just Zoom. Over COVID, we
Okay.
switched entirely to Zoom. When we were strictly seeing people in person in an office, we had a few clients that were remote that found us on YouTube, watched our videos, and thought, "Wow, it's like you guys are reading my mind."
Yeah.
And I had this one client from Sydney, Australia, and she
Wow.
worked together. And I said, "Okay, I mean this should work because I'm not doing anything to the person,
Hmm.
So all hypnosis, I forgot to mention this earlier. All hypnosis is self hypnosis. So what that means is I guide you, you follow, and you create the experience. So whatever you experience is right for you. There's no wrong way of doing it. So pressure off. The worst that happens is that nothing happens and you're not any worse off than you would be. But that's very rarely the case. And so I worked with her over Skype because this was before Zoom. Zoom didn't exist. And she was fine, So I just did my thing and she listened and I guided her and it worked great.
That's quite the time difference too.
It's what?
Quite the time difference too.
Yeah, she had to wake up at 6 a.m. and it was 4 p.m. my time.
Yeah.
And she did great. And it can actually even be more helpful because people are in the comfort of their own home, right? So they feel safer. They don't have to sit in traffic.
Yep.
So
Yep.
less likely to be late. It's just as effective. If anything, it's even more effective.
And that's relieving. I think because people always think about having to sit in office, almost like going to see a therapist or a psychologist type of situation, or the counselor, or the doctor, right? We have to go into the office now. Now we're starting to see some of that online too with other services, but it's nice to know that it can be just as effective on Zoom as, if not more effective than in person. Now, I know there's situations, honestly, that maybe hypnosis doesn't work for everyone. Who's not a good candidate for hypnosis, and maybe when should someone stick with the traditional approach to therapy and or medication?
Yes, if someone is really feeling down and let's just say they're actively suicidal, like not just thinking about it, but planning it and, because sometimes a thought can come in to many
Hmm.
people like, oh, maybe I'm better off. That doesn't mean you're suicidal necessarily, but it can just be a negative thought. But if someone is actively planning and things like that, I can't help that person. That person's probably better off getting stabilized first with medication before they come to me.
Yes.
Otherwise, through the screening process during an initial consultation, I look for readiness, willingness, and ability to be coached and have a perspective and have an open mind and realize that it's not what happened, it's their perceptions that are causing them to feel the way they feel. And as long as they say yes and they understand that, then I can work with that person. If I feel they can't be helped, whether they don't want to be helped, or there's also something fascinating called a secondary gain that is usually under the radar that they might not even realize is going on. So if for some reason they're benefiting from a problem state, then resolving the problem creates bigger problems, right? I once had a client who is a very, very famous music producer, very. And It seemed like he had a secondary gain. It didn't go too far as the work together, but this was someone who had unresolved trauma from growing up. I mean, who doesn't, right? To some
Yeah,
degree.
sure. Right. I did.
He lived his life with something to prove.
Hmm.
He was on a mission to prove himself that he's better, that he's good, that he's successful, and he did. And he made millions and millions and millions and millions of dollars, and he's extremely successful because of his need to prove himself.
Yeah.
You see, so
Yeah.
in his mind, if that went away and were resolved, he might have thought, oh, I won't be as successful as I am. So that was his drive to be successful, even though the driver and the motivator and the energy behind it is unhealthy. So he had a secondary gain to stay stuck because it made him millions and extremely successful and a huge career out of this, of his
Hmm.
problem state. So, you have to be ready, willing, and able to change.
Sure. And that makes a lot of sense. And I think you're over 20 years now in this business and thousands of clients. What's a success story that, say, surprised even you?
Not only the client who worked for the government, because I'd never, I usually know, okay, what happened, how old you were, how did it affect you, how does it still affect you, how do you feel about it? That's usually all I need to know. It's
Hmm.
helpful, but I don't need to know that clearly. And that was very surprising. I also had a client who was sex trafficked by her mother to an Indian guru. And of course, her mom clearly was very disempowered and was seeing this bogus guru, this, not really a guru. And she was giving him everything, money, possessions, for enlightenment. And so one day her mom told the guru, I've given you everything. Where's my enlightenment? And he said, you haven't given me everything. I want your daughter. So her mother proceeded to basically traffic her daughter for her enlightenment.
Wow. Yeah.
This girl, lost her virginity to this man, was raped dozens of times through her teenage years. I mean, it wasn't just one incident, it's one after the other. But the beauty about the work that I do is I don't have to go to every moment. I work with the feeling. And once the feeling is neutralized, it's almost like it creates a domino effect where all those other memories are just fine now. And it's pretty amazing. And she did great. And what's interesting is that the real trauma wasn't with the guru. It was about her mom not keeping her safe, not being able to trust her mom. That's why she had trust issues. Of course, we did some work around the guru in a few instances that stuck out in her mind. But the real thing we worked on, the core that surprised her, was how she felt about her mom. And she came into my office for her consult, and I took a picture of all these things she said she wanted to improve and all the problems that she had. And she came in with a whole list,
Mm.
all these things,
Yeah. It's
like
a
dozens.
long list. Yeah. I
And
thought my list was long.
and then this is what she wanted. And so I looked at it and she's like, I don't know if you can help me. I just have all these issues. And I looked at it and I said, well, being disorganized, self-indulgent, insecure, extremely self-conscious, too rigid, negative self-talk, disrespecting herself, self-sabotage, overthinking, procrastination, self-defeating, excessive worry, unmotivated, being mean to herself, not being able to forgive her. I was like, all these are symptoms,
Hmm.
except, fear of sharks and fear of airplane turbulence, which are completely unrelated.
Yeah.
We should be able to resolve all of this. There's just these one or two things, and I helped her see that. And when she came in the last day of her program, she had highlighted everything that got better, and she
Hmm.
highlighted everything except those two things, which we both laughed about because we knew it wasn't going to improve that approach. But that was really remarkable, and I've always remembered her. And that was like 10 years ago. And she did great. And I followed up with her every few years, and she's great. She's fine.
Excellent. That's powerful, and it's important, right? That's lasting success, which is helpful. Now, if someone comes in her situation, or they're just trying to break a bad habit, nail biting, emotional eating, whatever it might be. That first session, what's the first session typically like? Do you jump right in, or is it a more of a conversation? How does that work?
Kind of jump right in, but not aggressively. It's, because for example, nail biting is an anxious thing, and we do this to
Hmm.
feel a sense of control. Same with emotional eating or drinking. It's like we're in control of how much we do it, we're in control of how we do it. The nail biting is also kind of like a grooming sort of thing. So, but it's really anxiety driven. It's a little soothing, right? So there's benefits, otherwise people wouldn't do it if they didn't see any benefits to it, at least
Right.
at the moment. So usually first sessions are just clearing out the old and laying down the new, creating a new solid, strong foundation that we can build on. Because the stronger the foundation, the stronger the structure will be, and the longer the structure will last. So, clear out the old, start laying down the new, and we build on that, addressing fear, start to address fear if we, and just reminding people of things that they've always known about themselves, they just probably forgot.
That makes sense.
So it's really just foundational work is the first one. And
Sure.
it's pretty powerful. People don't even really have to pay attention. It's normal for your mind to wander. It'll always come back to my voice easily, but the subconscious mind records everything. So even if the conscious mind is wandering and daydreaming and kind of comes and goes, which is normal in hypnosis, it's actually kind of expected, then it doesn't matter. And sometimes we're like, oh, I didn't hear this part of that part. Or every time I hear it, I hear something different I didn't hear before. Totally fine. Totally fine. You don't even have to
Interesting.
remember it at all for it to work.
Wow. Yes, that's pretty interesting because not something I was aware of, and I'm pretty bad about my mind wandering, even in the day to day, right? So,
Well, people go in and out of
especially,
hypnosis like a dozen times a day without even realizing it. Like your mind may wander when you're driving.
yes.
You're driving and you reach a destination, you can't remember how you got there.
When I'm talking to my wife, yes,
Well,
she's like, "Are you listening?" Yes, I'm listening. But my
well,
one,
through the relaxed through the relaxed focus, let's just say driving, right? The relaxed focus of driving, your mind begins to wander. Your conscious mind anyway. You're always safe and you're relatively aware of what's going on and you're driving and you're in the car. And it's like a daydreamy kind of floaty, pleasant state. And then something happens that your mind comes back, your conscious awareness comes back, and you realize where you are and you realize your surroundings and like, how did I get here? I don't remember the last 10 minutes of my drive. Or you pass the exit. You're like, where was I? You're
right?
always safe. You just probably were in a light state of hypnosis. It's called highway hypnosis, actually.
Okay, yeah, that I've had that happen. I definitely know. You know, I've seen that scenario. It's a little unnerving, to be honest, but I have had it happen, and I've been like, what happened there? But I work hard to make sure that doesn't happen. One last question is, I know you've worked with thousands of people in your time in this business. For someone listening who's been stuck in the same pattern for years, same anxiety, same bad habits, same limiting beliefs, what do you want them to know about what's possible?
That your mind is so much more powerful than you may give it credit for. Just because things you've done so far have only worked so far, if at all, doesn't mean you can't be helped. When Todd first asked me, what would you say to me if I told you you could be grateful for your mom dying of cancer the way she did? I said, I'd tell you that's impossible. And he showed me that the impossible can be possible. It was just a belief I had, beliefs around grief and things like that, such as if I'm not grieving doesn't mean I don't love them anymore. Beliefs like that, and grief is a whole nother topic that's fascinating, but I would tell them that this kind of work can really help in a very quick way compared to what you've tried in the past. I'm living proof of that. All my clients are living proof of that. All the testimonials on our Google page. We have video testimonials on our website that people just can't believe how sometimes one minute they're feeling a certain way about something, and even in a small trauma response, and then the next minute they can be laughing about it and
Hmm.
smiling, and it doesn't even bother them anymore. And these results are very long lasting. I can't guarantee permanent, but that's the goal. It is possible to feel differently. It is possible to, you're not doomed. You're not, well, these are just the cards that I was dealt. I just have to cope. You don't have to cope. You don't need to learn more coping mechanisms. There is a solution. The worst that happens is nothing happens. And
Right.
I encourage people to inform themselves, visit our website, our YouTube page. Website's goodwinhypnosis.com, and take a chance, and you're worth it.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about the YouTube page. Is that also, I assume, Goodwin Hypnosis or?
Yes.
Okay, awesome. And I'll include that in the show notes so that there's access to that as well. Thank you, Gina. You've given people a different way of thinking about healing and cleared up many things about hypnosis. I'm impressed. I'm pretty excited about the things that can happen with hypnosis. I find it fascinating. I didn't know much about it coming into the conversation we had a few weeks ago. What I'd like to suggest is everybody make sure to go to goodwinhypnosis.com, check out their YouTube page, and some things I want you to take away from today. You're not weak because willpower doesn't work. You're stronger than you give yourself credit for. You are needed in this world. You deserve to be happy, and you're not stuck forever. There's hope and there's opportunity for you to heal. If you are struggling, call 988, the Suicide and Crisis Lifeline. Ask for help. Call 911. And if this episode helped you, please share it. Please share it. There's others that need to hear it. Subscribe to this podcast. Leave a review. Your support really can help others. I'm Mike Orlowski. This is Mojo Motivation and Mental Health. Choose happiness. Choose to be extraordinary. Work with your mind, not against it, and get your mojo back. Thank you.